I'm biased, but I consider this one of the greatest rivalries in sports. This story in life and in sports, bad things happen, but this is a story of karma. And I use the analogy of Red Wing D-Day. That's what initiated it when I saw Iggy throw a couple punches to Forsberg, and I remember looking over going, oh, looks so cute, like puppies on Christmas morning. Well, I not only slayed the dragon and getting the revenge of Lemieux, I got the girl. I always said is that the Detroit Red Wings will be back when the Toronto-Detroit rivalry heats up again. Who else do you want doing the job, bro? Like, seriously. Playoff hockey is the most exciting thing in sports. This Stars team's loaded. It is the Dallas Stars time. I'll go Toronto-Dallas in the finals for now, just for all you Maple Leaf fans that haven't won anything. And don't worry, I'm not talking to any Toronto Maple Leaf fan except for Chad Cowan out there, my cousin. I'm speaking right to you, Chadwick.
Center of conversation, the topic here, the Grudge episode, which is the Red Wings-Avalanche rivalry. Why don't you kind of detail the start and the beginning of that rivalry, what led to it back in, I believe, 96?
Well, actually, it's sort of yeah, it is 96, and where it really starts is in Montreal, right? It starts in Montreal with Patrick Roy still being part of the Montreal Canadiens and the Detroit Red Wings going in and I think beating them 11-1 or something like this. He wasn't pulled. The famous incident where he walked off the bench and told the owner, "That's the last game I'll ever play for you." So in hindsight, when you look at the start of this, we sort of did this to ourselves to begin this because we know that the trade was made for Patrick Roy in the 96 season to go to Colorado, which for us at the culmination of that regular season, we'd set a new league record at the time, 62 wins, and had to face Colorado in the playoffs. Long story short, in game 6 of the conference finals, the winner was going on to the Stanley Cup finals. Claude Lemieux, there's a lot more backstory that you'll see because Claude Lemieux was not only the most hated player in the league because of his dirtiness and cheapness, but he was also one of the greatest playoff performers and just winning the Conn Smythe when we lost to New Jersey in the finals in 95. He was the Conn Smythe, which is the MVP for the playoffs. So this guy's a good player and a thorn in our sides and stuff like this. But in the first period, I believe, of that game, he hits my centerman, Chris Draper, the grind line, who's not only my centerman, but my best friend in life, right in front of me. Hits him from behind, breaks his jaw in 4 spots, crushes his orbital bone. We lose the game. Lemieux gets kicked out. But the whole premise and why I tell everybody what this story is all about, this story in life and in sports, bad things happen, but this is a story of karma and what happens when you don't have respect for a fellow human being. And so it started, I guess the boiling point or the tipping point was in May of 96, but this was the culmination leading up to it in March 26, 97, which really sparked sort of our team coming together. And I use the analogy of Red Wing D-Day, just was March 26, 97. But the whole gravity to it is that you have, break it down as you'll see, you have 2 teams with probably 8-10 Hall of Famers on it, the elite of the elite talent-wise, but also the hatred that's built into the fan bases to everything else. I mean, this was as good as it got. I'm biased, but I consider this one of the greatest rivalries in sports. To me, this hits every page that when I was growing up, you had the Cowboys and the 49ers and all these different rivalries. So this, just because everybody was so great. And at the end of the day, because we realized and they realized, to win the Stanley Cup and to be the ultimate successful, we'd have to go through each other. Not just this year, not just 96, 97, but all the way up for 2002. So this rivalry really spreads like 96 to 2002. And I'm just very proud to be a part of it.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, the star power is insane. I mean, you keep going on and on, whether that's Iserman, whether that's Sakic, whether that's Forsberg, Waugh, and so forth. I mean, it's just insane. And as the NHL has changed a lot over the past 20 years with the salary cap and whatnot. That was really the last time period where you can really stack up all those star players on those teams. But yeah, I want to ask you, man, because obviously in '96, that whole thing. with you guys being upset by the Avalanche after having that great regular season, and then obviously, what happened with Draper, your good friend. I mean, you guys had to be seething for a long time heading into that 97 regular season game against the Avalanche when you laid those hits on Claude Lemieux, right?
Well, it built up to then, right? Because we played them three times during that regular season, but had lost. So I don't care what sport you're playing. Everybody knows that it's played anything that you have rivalries, and sometimes the only way out is through. Usually, it happens in high school sports or whatever, like that. Like this class can't get over a different class and stuff like this. So we see it in colleges and stuff like this. But this was at the pro level, so there was so much gravitas to it because of it was personal, because of the physicality, because of the hatred, but it was also because of the talent. At the end of the day, the bottom line for March 26th, it wasn't about getting a revenge. We had to win the game just psychologically because we knew we'd have to play them in the playoffs, and the no better time than for everything to culminate than that March 26, 97, which I don't know, dude. If you would have gave me a pen to write down how I wanted it to play out, I would have missed it. And the big guy made me the star. So I mean, it's just it's amazing. Sports has the ability to only write its own narratives that we can't even touch.
And I think you scored the game-winning goal in that game, right?
Well,
That really.
I not only slayed the dragon and getting the revenge of Lemieux, I got the girl. I stayed in the game. I got 4 minutes for roughing for felonious assault, pretty much. And doing things that like I smashed his face against the boards. I need him in the head. You can't do that stuff, but it just so happened that at this time, the ref didn't see it. Nobody called it, and I stayed in the game and scored the overtime winner too. So that was to me, that's like the karma. That's the God shot. That's like to me, that's just him saying like there's right and wrong. And this was that Lemieux not apologizing for breaking Draper's face was the biggest thing out of it. Like that's what I say. The sport would have taken care of itself, but like as a guy who played on the edge and whatever like that, you don't want to see somebody get seriously hurt. You want to exact their. We want to take the will from another man, but you don't want to take his livelihood. And that's the difference. And I think that, that this is, you said the game's changed. This is in 97. If you ask Claude Lemieux to today, and we've talked about it, we've done interviews about it and stuff like this, where it's just sort of that mentality that he didn't understand until later, the gravity of it. Right. And we sit here on our end and thank goodness that he, um, was that aloof to it because it changed the trajectory of our whole organization.
Yeah, I want to ask you, obviously, it kind of goes without saying, that regular season game in March of 97 where you overcome your demons, you get into the fight with Lemieux, you beat the crap out of him. You guys win the game, you eventually win the Stanley Cup that year, right? You broke the 42-year drought for the Stanley Cup. I mean, that date, that game, basically, it marked the turning point, right?
Red Wing D-Day. You know what I mean? You wanna say as we're coming into because it's coming up to Easter where there's the AD and the BC and all that stuff that like for the Red Wings and so for me it's like my perception is a little different because I grew up in Leamington, Ontario, which give or take 10 minutes for the border is the house I grew up in is 40 minutes to Joe Louis Arena. I grew up over here, Tiger Stadium, watching all the sports and stuff like this. So I knew the gravity of everything and for it just to culminate in the way that it did, but that to be the pivotal moment. I get asked all the time, right? Because I scored a Stanley Cup clinching goal and the only time I ever beat one guy one-on-one, it just happened to be in the finals. But having four cups or whatever, but I tell you that if there's any moment, I don't need to score the goal, but somebody does need to score the goal. But if I had to do anything in my career over again that I want the same way, it's that March 26th. And if you look at it, because I tell the story all the time, look how it started. Sometimes it's not the biggest, the strongest, the fastest, but maybe the wisest or the eldest because Igor Larionov, all 5'4", 140 pounds soaking wet, and Peter Forsberg, the two stars, decided they'd had enough with each other. And that's what initiated when I saw Iggy throw a couple punches to Forsberg. And I remember looking over going, oh, looks so cute, like puppies on Christmas morning. But then I knew Lemieux was on the ice. And then, everything had to play out. without Brendan Shanahan being my ultimate tag team partner, getting me loose from foot and taking care of Wah, who I don't even know is gonna like almost probably has his DNA on that jersey because he almost got to me and the goalies are fighting and all this stuff. I don't know that's going on. So I watch it after in the locker room. That's how crazy that it was. But again, I wouldn't change it for anything.
Yeah, I mean, you got, like you said before, you had to overcome your demons. You had to overcome the Avalanche in order to win the Stanley Cup. What I want to ask you is like going into that game, because you brought up you guys had lost the previous regular season games against the Avalanche that year. With that mindset going into March 26th, was it like, yeah, we're going to come out punching, swinging. We're going to come out.
No, the attitude was we have to win this game, right? Because we set the league record. They beat us out in the playoffs. We played them 3 other times this regular season, and we hadn't won. So as much as you want to get the physicality, it doesn't mean anything. But you got to win the game because we had to prove to ourselves that we could defeat these guys. Then it played over, and we beat them in 6 games in the conference finals, and we even lost the first game. And you know what? That was the most confident because we were playing our game, and we knew there was just a different confidence. What that game did for us was the fact that we looked left and right and knew the fact that we were team tough. We didn't need to have a heavyweight tough guy or whatever, but we were going to stick up for each other. And our the toughness of that team was the fact of the resilience and all through the lineup of like toughness isn't about fighting. Toughness is about doing it over and over and over again and taking the will away from your opponent. And that team did it as like probably, arguably out of my 4 cup teams, like that one was so special because obviously it was the first, and being from around here and knowing the first time in 42 years and stuff like that. So it was very special, and just like our captain Steve Iserman said, we'll take this, no matter where we go in life, no matter how many years pass, when we all get together and we're right back there.
Yeah, I want to ask you, obviously, Claude Lemieux is covered heavily in this episode. It's documented how much of a, agitator he kind of was, right? So obviously we've gone over how he didn't apologize for the hit on Draper. Hypothetically speaking, had he shown remorse, had he apologized, what would that would have changed a lot of things, would it have not?
It wouldn't. It would have changed. It would have changed the fact that it would have been more of to the code of the game, and he would have got fought, but it would have been more respectful, I guess. Instead of, you know what, like, listen, I'm a Gen Xer. I was raised by John Rambo. He drew first blood, bro. So you know what, I never condone the things that I did that day because you're not supposed to knee guys, you're not supposed to smash guys' faces against the boards. But you know what, I was raised a little bit different. So in that, and obviously I only got 4 minutes for roughing. 10-minute misconduct stayed in the game. So you know what? I mean, you can argue all you want, but I do the exact same thing again.
You guys, I think you were interviewed on that ESPN documentary, Unrivaled. You and Lemieux, correct?
Oh, yeah. I implore anybody, if you haven't seen Unrivaled by ESPN after you watch The Grudge, go back and watch that because this is the best part. Never do you get to hear both sides, right? You always only hear from the victors. History is written by the victors. You hear both sides of that and how, you gain more respect, I think, as a player for the other side because there was this. And as we get older, I think we mellow a little bit. But we made each other as great as we were because it was that old school. And anybody who's grown up, playing sports in the 70s, 80s, and stuff like this, it was different because you didn't have the internet. You didn't know the guy in the next town and stuff like this. You didn't play all these summer camps and all-star teams with them. Everybody knows everybody. So it takes that edge off, right? Where you got to prove. I mean, at the end of the day, like, and I'm grateful for that. But we see, like you said, and so I never talked to Claude Lemieux. There's an interview that was done by Michael Landsberg of TSN on Off the Record, and I think it was 2014. Now, why is that relevant? Because my sobriety date is November 11th, 2015. Day after St. Patty's Day, I was hungover to the schnubs. I wasn't having any of it. The first time Claude Lemieux and I sat down, but it was the first time that he sort of earned my respect of as like sort of a man that I needed to investigate a little more, because sometimes in sports guys are they can't separate the humanity because it's a game. And when you get to know about Claude and the way he was brought up or just his mentality, it was almost one of these things that until he didn't realize that he did something wrong, because that's the way he always played. But at the end of the day, it came up because you know what? Like karma's real, and it came up to bite him because this incident that happened was beyond sports.
Absolutely. Hey, I want to ask you, because you touched upon this before, and I kind of already know the answer to this. We're on the same page here, but that rivalry, Avalanche Red Wings, that was really the last great NHL rivalry. Wouldn't you say that?
Oh, that the rivalry?
Yeah, that's the last great, like true great NHL rivalry. Wouldn't you agree?
You know what? But that like you nailed it the NHL went to salary, right? Went to a salary cap and whatever, and I ended up going to Calgary, and that just changed sort of things. But you look at Batman hockey. Batman hockey is about parity. Batman hockey is about the end of the season. There's five teams vying for one spot or two spots and stuff like that. It's a different game. Back then, it was more rivalries. Like the Battle of Alberta. It'd be Edmonton and Calgary at some point, right? Toronto, Montreal, Boston and New York, and you know what I mean. It was that you knew every year, and you go back and ask the sort of the veterans and stuff, that they knew every year what it would sort of come down to a few teams. For us and winning the cups, and especially early up in the first three in 97, 98, 02, we knew we had to either get through Colorado or Dallas. Like those were the two teams. Like we had to get through St. Louis and Chicago's and stuff and Winnipeg, but we owned them. You know what I'm saying? Like the same way that we didn't want to get owned by Colorado, that we had to prove it. So all these great teams and all these Hall of Famers made it better. But I think that's what happens. You get those rivalries in the non-salary cap because it's just more impossible. And because like now it's like you want to start a rivalry with this team, but you got to worry about this team because it's 3 point game and you can't lose this and whatever. So it's just playing, right? I always said is that the Detroit Red Wings will be back when the Toronto Detroit rivalry heats up again, right? So that used to be a big one when I was a kid, no matter even though the Wings stunk, right? They get up to play their rival every game. So I don't know in this day and age if because of the way that the game is that you'll ever get that rivalry again. I think you'll see it more like we see it in the finals, as you have, you know, three or four teams on each side vying for the cup in a few years because that's their window. But again, playoff hockey is the most exciting thing in sports. So I tune in anyways.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the current Red Wings. Obviously, Detroit's known as Hockey Town, but they haven't been to the playoffs in 9 years. They've been through a rough stretch. Iserman's the GM right now. Thoughts on the current team and their direction under Iserman?
Well, disappointing the year, and so it's a different car. If you can actually go and look at what he had to work with when he got here, he hasn't been here 6 or 7 years because he was -3 to begin with the contracts and the things he had to untangle. Now you look at the kids he's drafted, and you look at the young guys from the Siders and the Raymonds, and obviously Dylan Larkin being your captain, but the evolution of the Edvinsons and the Johanssons and the Soderblooms and the Caspers and all these younger guys that are coming up, plus with Axel Sandel and Pelican, I call him the Pelican, coming over from Sweden and stuff, right? Because the new NHL, right, is you need your water bug D man. What do I mean by that? Like your Lane Hudson, your Quinn Hughes. You need the guy that can play tons of minutes and and be an effect on a game and kill penalties and stuff like this, but be able to skate. And so they're coming. The old adage is until they solidify their goaltending, right? Which is supposed to be the future, and Sebastian Cossa and Trey Augustine, who's in Michigan State, but how far away is that? So it's a trying time. But the one thing that Steve Yzerman is that when he talks, you have to listen, and his goal is to make this team, and it's disappointing didn't make the playoffs this year. Obviously, you want to elevate that step. They didn't elevate that step like Columbus or Ottawa did or whatever like that. And they can only look in the mirror for that. But I think they'll be better. And the goal of Steve Eisman, like he said, is when this team gets back in the playoffs, it's like it was in the past to be back for 25 years to be Hockey Town again. So I think with the youth that they still got about 2 or 3 years, but they could win a cup in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I can kind of tell by what you're saying there. And so you obviously you're a big believer in Iserman as the GM. He has the team on the
Who
right.
else do you want doing the job, bro? Like seriously, somebody's throw names at me that's better equipped than this guy that cares more to whatever. If you just want to blanket a statement and just say, well, you get this amount of time and then you didn't do it, then it's done, and don't see why it's done that way. You can question him on some of his free agent signings and their production and stuff like this. But at the end of the day, their contracts will never be here long enough. They were never part of the solution, anyways. You got to realize where you come from. You know what? Like, I mean, I'm the first one who, like, everybody knows is I'm the first one who's going to question them when I see to be able to question. But I try to give perspective because I was raised at the table by these guys. They don't tell me anything, but I read between the lines, and it's about solidifying this. And if they want to look in the mirror, you had the third worst penalty killing in the history of the NHL this year, under 70%. Maybe you want to start there because that's all effort.
So
But I digress.
those are the two key areas because obviously they got their young pieces locked up. They got Larkin, they got Raymond, they got Sider. So they got to improve the penalty kill and goaltending. Those are two key areas.
For a lot of teams too, but for this team, yeah, absolutely, because they have the guys coming. They got a great farm system in Grand Rapids, so um, it's not easy, and it would be nice if Steve Eisman could land a top free agent. He hasn't been able to do that. Draft hasn't helped him out. Being the worst team in the league and having to pick fifth, that doesn't help. Like different things like that. So if you see the why, you can understand it. So again, like I tell everybody, I never miss the playoffs. I have 4 Stanley Cups. So why don't you come and talk to me? We're at that next level when you are good enough to win it and you can't. I'll save my energy for that.
Well said there. And I want to ask you now, I want to shift overall to the NHL as a whole. Obviously, the playoffs are starting right now, or this weekend. Florida Panthers are the defending Stanley Cup champs. What I want to ask you is, what are your thoughts, prediction on the Stanley Cup Finals, who's going to win, and your thoughts on the Panthers going into the playoffs?
Well, it's going to be exciting. What's going to hurt the Panthers is not having Matthew Tkachuk, obviously, being that catalyst. But they've done it. They've accomplished it. So you can't count them out. My pick for the Stanley Cup is the Dallas Stars. I think that with what they've added in Mikko Rantanen, and I watched them. I actually sat in the Wings played the last home game last night. And I actually sat in the stands and watched the game. This Stars team's loaded. And if they can get the goaltending from Ottinger, they're going to be tough. But again, is it what happened at the Four Nations tournament? Does it mean it's Connor McDavid's time to shine and obviously do heartbreak and losing in 7 in the finals? Does Edmonton bounce back after that? We'll see. The bottom line is I love playoff hockey because it reverts as much back to the old game as we've seen. But again, there's going to be upsets. There's going to be new guys that are stepping up and making a name for themselves, and I just think that it is the Dallas Stars' time.
Yeah, you sound pretty confident in that. Dallas, obviously with Rantanen, I mean, they're a powerhouse. On the Eastern Conference side, you want to make a prediction there? And out of curiosity, if Kachuk returns during the playoffs, are they the team to beat? So to speak.
Well, here's the thing: I've had 3 sports hernia surgeries and stuff that he's fighting. He ain't going to be right, no matter how right to the top of what he is. My question is it the Leafs' time? Is it finally the Leafs' time? Do they get the goaltending? Do they step out in the East? So, I'll go Toronto, Dallas in the finals for now, just for all you Maple Leaf fans that haven't won anything. Maybe it's this year.
Good
You
stuff there.
always got to get in a Toronto chirp, bro. I mean,
Yeah,
they haven't won anything since I was born. Before I was born. And
yeah,
that's and don't worry, I'm not talking to any Toronto Maple Leaf fan except for Chad Cowan out there, my cousin. Right, exactly. That's you. I'm speaking right to you, Chadwick.
And yeah,
That that's sorry.
no, it's all good. If there's ever a time for the Maple Leafs to do it, it should be this season. I got to do it. Hey, man, I want to appreciate the time that you took out for me today, man. Great energy, great interview. Before we wrap things up, is there anything else that you want to get out there? There, did you hear me?
No, I didn't hear you, but the
Oh, no,
princess did.
what I was saying, but great interview, great insight. Before we wrap things up, is there anything else that you want to get out there?
No, I just think that thank you to this is such a honor to be a part of and the Vice TV to be able to recognize that people in sports that maybe aren't the biggest hockey fans or remember what it used to be like, but this is such a great preview going into the playoffs of what it really meant like, and I think that people that vaguely remember it or hear stories of it, if they watch this, they'll get the gist of it, and like you said, probably one of the last greatest sports rivalries in professional sports.
Absolutely, Darren. Hey, man, thank you for taking the time out to speak to me today. I wish you the best of luck. And yeah, man, hopefully we see some good playoff hockey.
Yeah, you betcha, bro. Who you got to win?
Who do I have to win? I mean, if the Panthers were healthy, because I'm actually located in South Florida and I've interviewed Kachuk before, I would have picked Florida. But with him banged up and Florida not looking too hot going into the playoffs, I'll probably go Stars. But like I was saying, if there was ever a time for the Maple Leafs to make it and make a deep run, it's this year because the conference looks very vulnerable. And I'm not
That's what I'm
confident in
saying, right? And you need, and that's part of it. You get opportunities, you get breaks and stuff like this. You got to take advantage of it. So we'll see.
But it'll always be interesting. Playoff hockey is the best. There's no doubt about it. Doesn't matter which teams are in it. It's going to be good regardless.
Amen, brother. Thank you for the time.